Start. Let's take a few moments just to breathe, just to be in silence for a few moments. The past couple of weeks I've been talking about Kriya Yoga, which is another word for yoga in practice. And when most of us think of that word yoga in practice, we probably have the idea of doing something like this, right? Get your arms up or doing a plank or something. And, but the Yoga Sutras say what constitutes yoga in practice are three things: purifying the mind through accepting pain. Now that we can talk about that, but I already talked about that, so we'll leave that for another time. Study of the self, study of spiritual teachings, whether it's the Bible or the Hindu scriptures, doesn't matter. Study something spiritual that helps you to get out of your limited self. And the third thing is surrender to the Supreme Being, however you understand Supreme Being. And then the second sutra, the second of the Yoga Sutras on practice, says that the practice of yoga is attained by lessening the hindrances and attaining samadhi. Or another way to say it is that the purpose of yoga is to lessen the hindrances and attain samadhi. And then the next one goes on to talk about what those hindrances are, one of them being hatred. So now I want to jump over to one of the teachings of the Buddha, because the Buddha says a lot about hatred. He says, hatred cannot be overcome by hate, but by love alone. And this is an ancient and eternal law. Now, I was just at the Martin Luther King event last night, and it turns out MLK used that exact same phrase. You just have to love Martin Luther King. He was inspired by Mahatma Gandhi, also that same region of the world, India. He drew from the Bhagavad Gita. Martin Luther King was inspired also by Thich Nhat Hanh, Thich Nhat Hanh was also inspired deeply by Martin Luther King. So all this crossover of teachings and how to actually put it into practice. And of course, Martin Luther King was able to put it into practice on a large scale, on a social scale, as was Mahatma Gandhi. And we're just practicing right here on a small scale, right? We're learning, how do we put the teachings of yoga into practice? How do we lessen the hindrances? Well, what helps us to lessen hindrances? Accepting pain as help for purification. This is why Gandhi could go in front of the British rule and take blows from the British police officers. It's not something that we want, but to not return those blows. That's a really, really hard practice. All we're doing here is sitting still, and that can be a very difficult practice, just simply to sit still, to be still with our mind. Our mind can be our best friend or our worst enemy. And I'm no better at this practice than you guys. I'm just happening to be in a place to talk about it. The second thing is to study ourselves. And the third thing is to surrender, to practice surrendering. So just some food for thought. Hatred is not overcome by hate, but by love alone. This is an ancient and eternal law. Something that we can strive to put in practice right here and right now. All right. So let's just take a few moments to sit. Maybe follow the breath. See what's coming up for us. Study the self. Surrender.